Well, good morning, everyone. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I, of course, thank the UN for putting this conference on today and thank Mami Mizatori. Can I acknowledge Minister Murray Watt as well and Minister Mark Furner. Excellencies, distinguished guests, our welcome visitors from interstate and Asia-Pacific neighbourhood. Can I also take this public opportunity on behalf of our state following the funeral last night of our late Queen Elizabeth to reiterate our gratitude for her service and to wish His Majesty King Charles a long and happy reign. And can I acknowledge our traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Well, good morning everyone and welcome to Queensland. We love our state and we love welcoming visitors. Of course, the reason you're here is that even though we live in a wonderful part of the world, sometimes we deal with nature's harsher side, and you do too. And though I say sometimes, now it's more often, all of us are now living with the reality of climate change. More storms, more floods, more fires, more extreme in more places. Since 2011, Queensland has faced almost 100 natural disasters, on average almost one a month for over a decade. No region of our big state has gone unscathed, and the climate experts have been shocked at some of our recent events, such as bushfires in the tropical north. Nevertheless, from everyone, we've learned to improve our disaster recovery and resilience. So let's also learn from one another. Queensland can learn from your knowledge, and I hope you also take something from our state's work. What we all want to do is reduce the human and economic impacts of natural disasters, to turn crisis into resilience, because disasters destroy bridges, buildings and businesses, and even worse, they take lives and ruin lives. Sometimes the emotional toll cannot be measured. And I'm very conscious that for many of our friends in the Asia-Pacific region, the loss of life and property from disasters in recent history has been overwhelming at times. In the time I've been Premier from 2015, there have been 65 natural disasters in our state. Storms, cyclones, floods, hailstorms and bushfires. I've had the moving experience of meeting many Queenslanders picking up the pieces of their lives, if the pieces weren't washed away or destroyed, including severe tropical cyclone Debbie in March-April 2017, the Central Queensland bushfires in November-December 2018, the North Queensland monsoon trough in January-February 2019, the South East Queensland hailstorm in October 2020. Then last summer we had a string of disasters, including ex-tropical cyclone Seth, the South East Queensland floods and Southern Queensland flooding in May. The frequency and intensity of those events is due to climate change, such as the unprecedented Central Queensland bushfires in late 2018. They started with an equally unprecedented heatwave that stretched over 1,000 kilometres, with low humidity across the supposedly wet tropics. At Proserpine, the temperature was 40 degrees and the relative humidity was only 18%. Proserpine is more than 400 kilometres north of the Tropic of Capricorn, one of the most humid parts of our state. Near Mackay, bushfire burned through rainforest, believed to be previously unrecorded in scientific journals. A climate expert said it was the terrestrial equivalent of ice sheeting breaking up. And for the first time in Queensland, the Weather Bureau rated the fire danger as catastrophic. But with only a few weeks came the extreme opposite. A monsoonal low flooded tens of thousands of homes in Townsville and killed hundreds of thousands of cattle in northwest Queensland. No one wants disasters like that, but we've learned a lot and fine-tuned our prevention, preparedness, response and recovery. As Premier of Queensland, I chair our Queensland Disaster Management Committee as soon as a serious threat emerges. And I want to talk a little bit about this with you today because I think this is a key to the way in which we deal with the natural disaster and then our recovery. It's a unique decision-making body in Australia. Everyone I need is in that room you see before you. We have our ministers, we have our heads of our government agencies, we have our mayors that dial in from all around Queensland, we have police and emergency services, we have energy and water suppliers, we have the Bureau of Meteorology that gives us updates 3 to 4 times a day. We also have our Queensland Disaster Management Officer who helps convey the messages to our public. We also have the Australian Defence Force that sits in on this meeting, and then I would make regular calls to the Prime Minister. We set our priorities, we carry them out, we get updates on the ground, and then myself, the Police Commissioner, the Emergency Services Minister, the Weather Bureau and the State Disaster Coordinator go out and regularly update the media and the public on what is happening. And it's our direct communication with what is happening at the present time to the public, no matter where they are in our state. And I think that gives the public confidence, but it also gives the public an understanding that our government is working with them to keep them safe in such a volatile period. One period I want to explain to you briefly, share with you, is Cyclone Debbie. A tropical low became a Category 2 cyclone and then a Category 4, hitting populated areas as far as the North Coast on the 28th of March, achieving peak sustained winds of 175 kilometres per hour. In the preparation for this, we were giving regular updates to the community. We evacuated areas where we could, but then when there was no further way of people leaving some of our Whitsunday islands, they were put into a lockdown situation until the cyclone passed. This was a very severe cyclone. The wind and flooding which followed affected the Whitsundays. It then went all the way down to Brisbane, where we are now, into northern New South Wales, and then the tail went into New Zealand the following week. That Disaster Management Committee I spoke to you about, we met 10 times over a 10-day period. We met up in the lead up to the emergency preparations, we met during the cyclone to coordinate decision-making, and afterwards we got people on the ground to help with the recovery. We prepared for up to 25,000 people to be evacuated with shelter and emergency supplies, and we also ensured the connection of power following. We looked at transport and other regional highways that were cut, and it responded to the destruction of Shute Harbour, one of the major port facilities in the region, which you are seeing in front of you. You can see from the before and after photos what has been achieved in rebuilding some of our infrastructure that was damaged. This is Shute Harbour today in 2022, recently opened. We also put in place a new Proserpine Entertainment Centre, and it was wonderful to open this new centre earlier this year. This previous centre had its roof ripped off, and then we were able to reconstruct that. There's also a new centre to house the local Regional Disaster Coordination Centre and a Climate Innovation Hub. All of that is how, in Australia's most disaster-affected state, we've set to be the most resilient. On the policy front, we are addressing climate change with our 50% renewable energy target by 2030 and a commitment to zero net emissions by 2050, with an interim target to reduce emissions by 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. And I'll have more to say about this next week in my State of the State address. We're also the first state with a permanent recovery and resilience agency called the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. This authority coordinates infrastructure renewal in disaster-affected communities. It was set up under an Act of Parliament, and it ensures that everyone is working together. For example, more than 520 projects have been delivered in 70 local government areas because of this reconstruction agency. Under the Queensland Betterment Fund, disaster recovery investment is to build back better. Of those 520 projects, almost three-quarters have been in natural disasters again, but remarkably, less than 20% of them suffered any new damage. So a $137 million betterment investment has avoided reconstruction costs of nearly $400 million. A good example is the Gayndah-Mundubra Road, a couple of hours north of here. The essential freight and transport link was damaged in 2011 and 2013. Betterment funding was used to relocate a 2-kilometre section 11 metres uphill. The road has stayed functional since then and through 7 disasters. Another key example of building back better is the Horton River Bridge, which had to close for 6 days after the 2019 monsoon trough. Just last month, we opened a brand new bridge, which is, there you see the before and after. Brand new bridge, it is much higher, and there is virtually no possibility of this bridge flooding again because of the amount of work that has gone into making it more resilient. There was also the scenic highway on the Capricorn coast after Cyclone Marcia, and the community of Cardwell after Cyclone Yassi, as you see on the screen. Another new initiative that our government has launched is the $741 million jointly funded Resilient Homes Fund after recent floods. This is in partnership with the Commonwealth Government. It is the largest of its kind in Australia's history. For property owners to raise or retrofit their homes to increase flood resilience, or in severe cases, voluntary buyback. So in those really low-lying areas, we are actually working with the councils, and we will buy back some of those properties and turn those areas into parkland. More than 4,800 people have registered. Another good example is the relocation of Grantham. This happened in 2011, prior to me becoming Premier. Nearly every house in the floodplain was damaged, 130 severely damaged and 29 destroyed. So it was decided that the town would be moved to higher ground. The Reconstruction Authority and the local council developed the plan for rebuilding this community. The new site on the hill had state permission to bypass the normal development proposals. But disaster resilience work can never stop. So as part of this conference, I'm very pleased to be releasing Queensland's new 5-year strategy to strengthen disaster resilience. Our new strategy will include things like community-informed resilience investment, greater interagency coordination, and making resilience business as usual, to move further away from reactive recovery to deliver stronger, safer and more resilient communities. We must be strategic about what we build. Better resilience changes lives and saves lives. We also have regional resilience strategies working on our regional communities. Our new strategy will also look to the knowledge of our First Nations people. So, in conclusion, our government is proud to help lead the way in disaster resilience. I hope I've given you an overview of how we can go about it. But before I finish, I'd just like to share with you a little story about Pam Murphy. In 2019, 40 years of memories were lost when her home was destroyed in the Peregian Beach fire, one of the fires which climate experts had never seen. I will always remember the day we were able to hand back one of her necklaces. It had been recovered by one of our on-the-ground emergency services staff. It had been cleaned by the local jeweller. More recently, we've read how Pam rebuilt. Her story is like so many others. They are why we're releasing our latest strategy. and they are why you're here today. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I hope I've shared a small little example of how Queensland deals with the challenges that we all face due to climate change, and I'd be more than happy to share with you any further expertise that our agencies have with any of you, so please feel free to reach out to the Queensland Government and to my office. Thank you for coming to Queensland, to Brisbane, an Olympic city and Olympic state for 2032, and enjoy Queensland. Beautiful one day, perfect the next. Thank you.